Here's your color wheel. So one thing I put on Moodle that you could use if you want, or you could make your own, is this idea of kind of these shapes, to think of it as this. So here is really just this idea of an axis, right? All of these are going to kind of rotate around a middle point potentially. So there's like a kind of a complementary relationship. You kind of know you don't need a dial to figure this out so much, right? But this could help you for some of the kind of like tertiary colors to think of as a way of creating that uh, thing of the arrangement. So we've already kind of done this idea of a complementary. That's the kind of that line that we did before, right? So I'm showing you that even though you've already kind of done it, the saturation line that you put up for homework this week. So the next one is this idea of a triad. So right there, you can see there's the triad right there. This is blue, red, and yellow. So, and think of it again as this kind of axis running out. So here might be the kind of tints in the middle. And then as you go out here is more kind of like shades of any of those colors. So that's a very strong relationship of a triad, right? Equilateral triangle, the primaries, that's a triad right there. But you could also do the secondaries, right? Green, orange, and purple. Think of those. Or you could dial it this way and have, you know, kind of a reddish orange, a yellowish green, and a purplish blue or something like that. So think of this as a kind of a thing that can keep spinning around. And of course, a imaginary color wheel would have all of the steps in between there. And you could kind of use this as a tool to help you kind of find where you are with that. Does that make sense? So anyway, these are, you can make them yourself or you could just print them out. I gave them there. The next one was number on the sheet here is, so we just did number 2. That was the triad. Split complement. So this is a different triangle. This is an equilateral triangle, but this one is a different triangle, which is kind of a little bit mutable, right? On one hand here, you have this point, and then this part of the triangle could kind of get a little narrower or a little wider. But so right there is kind of a pick of colors. This kind of a purplish blue, a kind of a turquoisey blue, and an orange. So that's a split complement idea there. And again, anything along the axis from tints in the middle to kind of shades moving out from the prismatic center of the color wheel. Okay. Tetrad. Now here we have a couple of possibilities. We have, it's 4 sides, so 4 things like this. So this is a rectangle that could be kind of made a little narrower, rotated, or expanded all the way to a actual perfect square, right? And there it might give you some idea of like something like that, and that is an idea of a tetrad. So because this rectangle to square is pretty mutable, it really gives you, first of all, it gives you 1 more color to choose from instead of 3. It gives you 4. That's the derivation of the word tetrad. And it gives you a lot of kind of mutability of how to kind of think of that, that rectangle. I think this one can be a little bit confusing. So this might be a good one to kind of just make and play on your own color wheel that you already painted to kind of help you kind of locate. And then the last one is this idea of an analogous one. And this one, it's a smaller triangle. So it's really one point is actually the axis that it's spinning on. And it could be a little wider or a little narrower, something like that. So I'm giving you this idea of this dials as a way to kind of, you know, physically conceptualize what you're trying to seek in terms of the color. So what do some of these projects look like? Well, the first one that we're going to do is it's called in-class project, but you know the difference between in-class and homework is a little fuzzy. So this is a primary triad set. Use the same composition for both of them. It's going to be a paired composition to make 2 works, each 6 by 6. Here's my example here. Okay, get that straight. Each 6 by 6 square. Use a different combination of primary colors for each composition. So think of it this way. You have 6 co-primaries, right? Let me dig these out. This one happened to be split into, this one is the warm colors. So that's Where's my yellow? That red, and that blue. And this one is that one, and that one. The blue's actually not quite perfect. There was another type of blue. But so this one I divided into kind of thinking of as one side all the warm coprimaries and the other side all the cool coprimaries. So you've got 9 zones in each one of these compositions because you're going to start with each of the 3 colors. You don't have to copy this design again, that's not important. But your first 3 colors are right out of the tube. Those 3, that kind of saturated primary triad. And then you're going to do something with kind of mixing a tint with one of the reds, let's say, and a shade with one of the reds. And how much tint? Well, that's totally up to you. How much darker would the shade be? That's totally up to you. So it's basically about kind of finding the way to play with those combinations off of this center relationship, this harmony of the primaries, right? You could do something else where you kind of scramble them up a little bit. I don't really care about that. The main idea is that you use one set of 3 for this and another set of 3 for this, and they're different then. Now, what are you going to use for your modifiers here? Well, white is certainly going to be part of something that you could do for tints. And then anything really to modify it for the shade. So that could be one of your chromatic darks that you mixed, let's say, or you could use a little bit of your brown to kind of modify any of the things. Any of those things are desaturators. And so you could use any of those things, right? So here I say you have 6 coprimaries, choose any 3 for each study, and then the other 3 for the other one. If you want, you can choose to select primaries according to temperature, but you don't have to. Leave some white around the edges. And down here I say, so same composition, and then the modifiers can be any one of those things like your brown, your chromatic darks that you mixed, or your white. Those are all going to be things that desaturate it. Okay, so that's the first project. I actually don't mind if you don't do this one right away in class. You could jump to any one of these projects. The next one is going to be, this is a secondary triad, right? So again, think of it as being like I selected something like that, right? Somewhere like that, right? There's that kind of green that's in there. There's that kind of orange that's in there. And then there was a kind of a purple. And as we know, our purples are really weird. So it looks very dark, but that's actually the purple. Yeah, it's not as beautiful purple as that. So here's one of the colors, here's the other color, and here's the other color. And then I modified it just once. Here's kind of a slightly shaded version of that green. Here's a slightly tinted version of that purple. And here's a slightly shaded version of that orange. So for these compositions, you're just using 3 colors and then 3 modifiers, right? So that's the first, it's called number 3 here for the homework projects, secondary triad. So make sure that you have the right amount of colors. It says here, using the following color codes, begin with the prismatic hue, so dupe, dupe, and dupe, and 1 color additive to each of them to create a composition in 6 colors. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. So that's that one. Here's the next one, which is the split complement. Again, just to think of what that would look like. I'm gonna go in reddish, and I think it was something like that, kind of purplish and greenish on the kind of split complement. I think I had my triangle a little wider out there. And here's what it looks like. The red, the purple, and then that green, and then this, and this are all the kind of modified versions of those colors, taking one step to modification either. And I've kind of listed here what they are. So really, with these things, I'm giving you someplace to start, to kind of find on your dials what your split complements are going to be. But then how you modify them, what you want to do with the compositions are really up to you. So think about it a little bit as you're trying to make an interesting painting in these, and find what you can kind of do with modifying, and then see how the whole thing feels like it kind of hangs together as a harmony. All right. The next one is tetrad. So this one is going to have 8 colors because again, the triangle here had 4 things plus 4 modifiers. So here's the version I did. So, you know, think of the dial as kind of reaching kind of that orange, that yellow, that purple, and that kind of tealish green, I think is what it was. And then there's the modified orange. Somebody have a question?
Really quick, what was the
Yeah,
one before this? I'm writing down
yeah,
notes.
split complement.
Okay, thank
So
you.
it's here on the list as well. So, and in the examples I have on Moodle, they're all numbered. So you can kind of see here, this one says number 4, and then you can find it on the list here, okay?
Thank you.
Yep, back to this one. So a little more complicated because it has 8 colors instead of 6 because you've got the 4 colors that are on your dial and then the 4 colors where you're modifying them, all right? And then the last one is kind of back to 6 colors, and that is analogous. So, you know what that looks like? That's kind of thinking of the dial as something like that, somewhere in there. And there you can kind of see those colors. So there's my kind of straight out of the tube yellow. I think this is kind of a middle orange, and then a farther, no, then I think this was the kind of the orangish red. And then this is the orange with just a little bit of white. This is the yellow with a little bit of maybe some brown or something. And this is the, I think that's the orange with a lot of white, something like that. Okay, so you can refer to the slide talk if you need to. That'll be posted. I think it actually already is up there. To see those, remember I had those images of the kind of the color wheels where they're kind of grayed out with just the kind of idea of the dials pointing in the directions, or I put the dials as a sheet of all these kind of things up on Moodle, and you can refer to the directions. So these projects are really much more about you starting to kind of stake out some more of your own tastes in a sense in these projects, right? I'm giving you the starter ideas that it has to be, you know, these a set of 3 colors, let's say a split complement. You can kind of define that how you want on your triangle, and then you kind of modify it how you want. You can kind of do anything you want in terms of the composition. I think the first 2, it's good just to have them be the same kind of thing, just so there's a kind of sense of comparing the 2 sets of colors. You know, you're kind of starting from the same idea in both of them, but they feel a little bit different because of the choices of the co-primaries and what you're adding for modifying them. So that's, I think that. So what we're going to do now is we're going to go to breakout rooms, and you can start on these projects. Like I said, you could jump ahead and do these so-called homework ones if you want first, or you could do the 1 and 2 first. I don't really care, whatever you feel you want to jump into. I would also say that in something like this, if you're starting to get a little bit worried about your paint supplies, you know, there's no reason why that, if you're running out of yellow, there's no reason why that yellow has to be that big. You can make it very small, hopefully have enough just left to do any one of these things. And so you can kind of modify your composition and your shape making and your amounts of colors to kind of suit what you've got left with paint if you're starting to run out. We're going to use the paint for this week and then for next week, and then we're done with it, these gouaches. So hopefully we have enough to kind of get you through. If you're finding you need to use a little bit of something to extend, like maybe you've run out of white and need to use a little bit of an acrylic, regular acrylic white, that's fine. You could do that. Or maybe you have another set of gouache somewhere you can mix in. That's fine, because we're really starting to explore different corners of color now that are more subjective to you. So it's less about us trying to have a commonality of what we're trying to get at with the color, and it's more about you designing your own projects a little bit more. I would just say one thing about the composition is don't make them too recognizable. I said this once before, you know, no like kind of silhouette of a running man, because that kind of distracts from what we're just trying to see the color do. So really abstraction is the order of kind of doing these so that associative stuff doesn't kind of get in there. It's just the color doing what it's doing. Okay,